they're not wanting to hire people. If you are a copywriter listening to this and your bio on Facebook or your bio on LinkedIn or wherever you do your networking and you do your social says copywriter, email copywriter, especially as the market's kind of gone a little weird, people's cash flow is kind of doing crazy things right now. If you ask, hey, do you want to add on a $5K a month burn for a decent email copywriter? Most people are going to say no. But if you position yourself to be, hey, I help people make an extra $200,000 per launch through back-end email, then all of a sudden you switch from being branded as an expense to being complete opportunity.
How do you go about identifying what you need to be known for and how you want the market to see you?
Yeah, that's a great question. The people who stand a head and shoulder above everyone else in terms of their brand inside of the space, whether they're gurus or not, the people who just have the eyeballs when no one else does, they get the engagement, they get the clients, they get the inbound. There's 4 things that they're consistently doing that the typical, I'm going to go post on Facebook or post on LinkedIn person isn't doing. And there's actually, inside of it, there's 4 lies that people are following inside their personal brand that is causing them to just be tossed aside and disregarded. The biggest lie in personal branding, thing that trips most people up is...
So, today I'm here with Skystack, and I've heard a lot of cool stuff about you. We've been chatting back and forth, and I know you've worked with, how many clients actually have you worked with at this point?
Gosh, at this point for building brands, well over 100 and just different capacities. But if I count up all the projects I've done for myself, all the products I've launched, all the events I've done throughout my career, I mean, we're looking at well over 500 brands I've built over the last 12 years.
Wow. I think copywriters are going to get a lot of value from what we're about to talk about, because most of the clients I've worked with, a lot of the very successful copywriters, they're working with personal brands. They're working with brands, that it's not just, generic products. Most of the guys that make good money have a brand. So,
yeah,
once you know how to build brands, and once you understand the psychology and how to set your clients apart from their competition, you really can crush it as a marketer and as a copywriter. So, thanks so much for being here and being willing to share some secrets with me. Yeah.
Let's get into it, man. I'm always happy to share the secrets because I find every time I share a secret, I get a new one. So I'm never afraid to give them out.
Just before we got started on this recording, you were talking about how you were actually not always building brands. You were also you were working with, you had an agency at some point as well, and then you changed your trajectory.
Yeah. So little backstory on me is I taught myself Photoshop when I was 8. Design was my first skill, and I just stacked them on top from there. So I learned social, and I learned branding, and I learned design, and I learned copywriting and video editing and web design. And so I had all of these skills that I was able to go out at 24 and launch a 6-figure agency with my fiance. We hit 6 figures and run rate within the first few weeks there with our contracts and everything. And I ran that agency for a number of years until at the end of 2022, all of a sudden Q4, every single client that we had at that agency, which we had spun up to a comfortable like $35K a month. It wasn't crazy money, but it was, it was enough that any bigger, I'd have to hire more and we'd have to do crazier stuff. And I like being able to stay home with my family and have some free time and things like that. But we just went from 35K down to 0 within a matter of like 6 weeks. And it was frustrating because it was like, man, you bust your chops, you're an entrepreneur, you go out there, you leave your job to go out on your own, and then it felt like everything was taken away. And the more that I reflected on that season, the more that I realized that this was positioning me right where I needed to be. Because in the summer of 2020, I came across a little known business influencer named Alex Hormozy, who had about 35,000 subscribers on YouTube at the time. And I was a big Gary Vee guy at the beginning of Gary Vee. And I saw, okay, hey, this is the next guy running the Gary Vee playbook for personal brands. And when I saw the $100 million offers book before it became what it became, I realized, man, this is the type of thing that I should be doing instead of working with small businesses. And we worked a lot with like Botox clinics. So instead of trying to sell lip filler, I need to be working with the people like the Hormozys, and I need to be helping them grow this kind of a message. And I forgot about that. I kind of pushed that in the back of my mind because, hey, we got this great business. It's funding our lifestyle. The pandemic was happening. We have some security. Like, who am I to turn to my family to be like, hey, we should stop doing this thing that's really good for us right now? Because I feel like I need to go kind of follow my passion. It almost seemed like. But I've learned that God and the universe, they have different plans for you. And so quickly
Hmm.
found myself going from 35K down to zero and then having to rebuild that clientele by first going in on my brand. And so I probably, people say, hey, you should get sales before you build a brand. Too many people try to figure out their logo before they try to get clients. They kind of procrastinate with that. And that can be true for some people. But what I've found more than not, especially in 2025, with how resistant the market is, with how we're in this quote unquote trust recession that everyone seems to echo, what I've found is that the brand is almost the prerequisite to the sales. Where you can get one or two deals if you kind of leverage some people, or you can be in your local network and try to scrape, clients there. But if you want to work with serious people who have serious brands, you need to come to the table with your own brand too. And so it was one of the most confusing experiences to lose all of that. But looking back, it put me right where I need to be. I could either have gone at the time where it was offered to me, or I could have gone and been forced and kind of kicked through that door. But either way, I was going to be here. And yeah, I'm excited just to chat about what we can chat about here about brand.
I love brands, and the fact that you were pushed into that path, or you were pulled into that path. I think it's a great thing, because I found ever since I've been investing in my brand, sales has become a very, very small function actually of my business. It's become very, very effortless. When I first got started, the sales process, the time it would take to take a client from, they don't know if they want to work with me, to I got to have a long conversation with them and then do a little bit of discovery, and all that stuff's very, very short now.
They are,
Sales
for
conversations
sure.
for me when I'm a coach, for example, 10, 20 minutes. It's not even, I don't even get on the sales call. I literally just will text. It's like, hey, here's what it's about. Tell me a little bit about your situation. Here's what I recommend. Are you in or you're not in? Done. Whereas 5 years ago, yeah, it would take, a long time, and you got to filter through a lot of people. And now when you have a good brand, it does a lot of that for you. And
Yeah.
as a copywriter, working with personal brand clients, because actually I've worked with a lot of personal brands as well. I think at this point, between like directly working with clients, that's just over 24, maybe like 27, 28 directly, 7, 8 figure coaches. And then within my, through copywriters I've been coaching, probably another 200 or something at this point. So it's kind of cool. We're kind of we're orbiting. We're kind of like doing similar sort of stuff, but for different people, and like slightly different a service. But, exact same experience as my brand has got better and better. The last sales call I was on recently for a client, it was like, closed a 5K deal with 10-minute 10-minute phone call. It was super, super
Yeah.
easy, right? So I think copywriters are sleeping on brands. It's not just it's not like, oh, you should go build this 8-figure business's brand. It's like, you should build your own brand as well. And it's not as difficult as people think it is. People think, like you said, it's all about the logo. I don't have my signature right now is all I'm using as a logo. I haven't invested some serious time into that. Brand is not a logo. There's so much more to it, and I'd love to know, what would you say, regardless of whether it's for copywriters looking to build their brand or for clients, how do you even start thinking about what a personal brand is and how you can use it to grow?
Great question. So let me define what a brand is, and we'll define personal brand and branding, because they all get kind of confused. So brand is simply real estate that you own in someone's mind. So whether that be a prospect, whether that be someone you want to be a client, whether that be, your YouTube audience, right, or your email list, who do they think you are, right? What do you own? When they think of Matthew, do they hear, copywriting? Do they hear help me make money as a copywriter? What's the actual territory that you own? And then branding is how we actually keep up with that. How do we maintain that, And that's where things like, is the logo creating the right story? Is the fonts creating the right story? Is the color, the backdrop, whatever it might be? Are we actually telling the right story that we can actually keep, maintain, and expand that amount of property that we have in someone's mind? Because your brand is what's going to make the sales when your ads turn off. When
Oh, I
someone
like that.
shuts
Yeah,
off,
that's good.
if you shut off your ads and you still can get sales, you have a good brand. But if you're just in this direct response world where you're only making cash, and I told this to a client I was working with a number of years ago, actually, one of the few coaches I started working with before I kind of transitioned to what I'm doing now. And I could just see uh, how frustrating it was to solely depend on the paid traffic we were running for this guy, and told, hey, you need to build a brand, because what will happen is if you build a brand, then you can shut your ads off. You can still be making cash. You could be getting organic sales that then floats your ROAS. So you're able to be, making more with less, essentially. And if anything happens to your industry, and there's lots of things happening in his niche because he was in a very gray area niche, it's like you're covered. You don't have to worry about if Facebook is going to necessarily shut down, ads in your category, or if YouTube is going to. And so it really makes you resilient, right? And so what a personal brand does is what does my name and what does my face? So those are kind of the two things. Your headshot is more of your logo than your logo is these days if you're a personal brand.
Yeah.
But when my name comes across someone's newsfeed, or my face pops up on a video on YouTube or a thumbnail or something like that, a reel, right? What is the first reaction that someone has to that? And this is the old phrase, I'm sure in email copywriting, very well, which is the from line is more important than the subject line, right? Is that, you can have garbage subject lines, but if people know that you always send valuable emails and that you have the best thoughts, then they'll click on that regardless. And so all that to say, brand is the territory you own. A personal brand is just, what does your name and your face, how does that own? What associations do you have in someone's mind? And then we use things like branding to do that, right? Just like, you do a remodel on a home that you buy to flip, right? You upgrade that property. If you need to upgrade the property that you own in someone's mind, that's where we look at things like upgrading the colors, the fonts, the logo, things like that, to be able to continue to create and establish that territory.
It's very interesting because that makes a lot of sense. So like the brand, if I were to try to translate it into my world and how I would usually look at things, I usually look at like a marketing message, especially let's say for coaches, right? A coach will, let's say, help somebody, let's say, create a side income from real estate, right? Let's say that that's like what they help people with. Then their goal with their brand would be to associate themselves with, investor that makes money on the side. Like, this is the guy that's going to help me to create income on the side. So you got to really spend a lot of time making sure that you have that marketing message that people automatically, they see your face or they see the name and they think, like for me, I think for now, for the most part, most of the people that are aware of me, they say copywriter and coach. That's like the guy that coaches copywriters and the guy that helps copywriters make more money. That's sort of like the general idea of what people see me as in the space.
Yeah, for
sure.
But
I had a client that, and I just thought of this now as you were talking. I had a client that had a real estate offer, and their message was very dependent on like the way they were helping people to purchase real estate. And they actually told me at one point they were changing it. They were no longer going to say it that way. And I was like, this is going to be difficult because the way, because I was thinking in my head, like the whole market, their ads, their organic, everything, everyone knows them as the investors that get this for their clients. It was like very, very, I'm not going to say any details, but it's like, because people might even know who it is, but it's like, we help our clients to do this with real estate. And they were like, no, we don't want to say that anymore. And it's like, now you got to have, there's some serious work to be done here because you have to change every single person's, mental image or the way that they see you in the market. And it's not so simple because now suddenly everybody's been thinking that for years. It would be like, I guess, Robert Kiyosaki. Everybody thinks of Robert Kiyosaki as a real estate guy, but like suddenly he starts talking about, something else. It's like that's an interesting perspective, but he's not the authority on all those other topics that, people wouldn't think of that first, right?
For sure. Yeah. And it's what a lot of people get in trouble too when they switch offers. If you're like a copywriter, you're email copywriter now, but 6 months ago you were doing Hormozy Reels. And then before that you were doing crypto. Like people who, one of the things that is really crazy is I've been doing this inside of this space since the beginning of 2023. And in like the two and change years, there have been the 7 and 8 figure clients who might have wanted to work with me since the beginning. And they've just been waiting to be like, is he going to stick with it? Will this guy still be saying the same things in 2 years? because that's who, when you want to play with people who are playing a bigger game, they're looking for, hey, who's not just here to kind of cash in on the gold rush, right? It's like, who's actually here for the long term? Do you really want to put your money, if let's say you have a large amount of cash to put into crypto assets, do you want to be working with the person who just heard that crypto is hot and when Bitcoin peaked, 6 months ago, they got into it?
They went all
Or
in.
they went all in?
Yeah.
Or do you want to find the person who, like in 2015, when I remember when Bitcoin came out, and I'm kicking myself for not buying back then because you could buy a pizza with one Bitcoin. But are they going to look for that person, right? And hey, who's been in this and who hasn't changed and who's stuck with it? So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because yeah, so many people, especially copywriters. And one other thing that's really good that you mentioned as well is that you defined your clients and you defined yourself more as what you do for people than who you are. Because here's the thing: if you are a copywriter listening to this and your Facebook says, let's say your bio on Facebook or your bio on LinkedIn or wherever you do your networking and you do your social, says copywriter, email copywriter, what that is doing actually is that is categorizing you for when people are convenient to hire you. Meaning, I'm going to bring you on as a copywriter when I think I need a copywriter. And especially as the market's kind of gone a little weird, people's cash flow is kind of doing crazy things right now. They're not wanting to hire people, right? So if you ask, hey, do you want to add on a 5K a month burn for a decent email copywriter? Most people are going to say, no, I'm going to try to figure out with ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. But if you position yourself to be, hey, I help people make an extra $200,000 per launch through backend email, then all of a sudden you switch from being branded as an expense, right? Or something that's, part of their monthly burn, to being complete opportunity. And so there's a lot of, I see, because I have a lot of copywriters who add me or funnel builders who add me on Facebook, and I kind of check out their stuff. And I know when they're doing well or when they're not doing well because of how they're actually describing themselves. And are they the person who, hey, I'm a copywriter who I need to fit into a copy slot inside of your business? Or are they positioning themselves as, hey, I'm a growth expert, I'm a back-end sales expert, I'm a reactivation expert, I'm the person who takes your ROAS from 2x to 5x by, getting them back on the phone on the back end. If you can start positioning yourself in that way, you'll find that you have a lot more offer owners who are willing to work with you, because when they go to do a launch, that same fear that is preventing them from wanting to hire you on retainer for 5K a month, because they're like, hey, I don't know if I want to take on that burn right now, or 10K a month, or, however you coach your clients to charge. Now that same fear is now driving them to be like, hey, if I want to have a successful launch, I know that my email isn't covered. Maybe I should reach out to Matthew or one of Matthew's students to be able to do this, because I know that person is really good at, squeezing more money out of launch through email. And so there's a difference between, when you brand yourself as just, this is what I am, like I'm a branding person, then you kind of pigeon yourself for when people want to go hire that person, a branding person, a personal trainer, this or that. But when you position yourself as the opportunity to lead people to a better future, then whenever they want that future and they come up against kind of that sales box, right? That where they want to get somewhere, but they can't get there alone. Then that's when you kind of sneak into their mind and your brand can start generating some sales for you.
Yeah, I really do like that. It goes back to how I've seen like marketing messages. It's like your marketing message is like who you help to get what result. And then the offer is for personal brands is usually the personal brand. And then like an extension of the personal brand is their product. So like information guys, right? Let's say they're a coach. It's like you're technically hiring them, right? I mean, I've noticed this big this transition from like 2018, 2017. There's a lot more like mechanism for coaches. Is like, oh, this is the way to do real estate, and that's still obviously very, very important. But today it's a lot more about like who you are. 80% of it, 80% of it's like this person. I like this person. These are their values, their personality, the way that they talk to the way they talk to me, and then they also have a product I'm in. I don't really care exactly what the product is. I just want to learn from, Sky or something like that, right? So that's interesting. So then my question would be, because I know a lot of copywriters, they're thinking like, well, like you said, I don't want to pigeonhole myself. I don't want to like get like get myself stuck in a brand that's not exactly serving me. And I also don't want to change every 3 months, and that also weakens my positioning and my integrity of my service, because it just sounds like I'm whatever to anyone. And I also think of my client who literally needed to change their messaging because they no longer felt like the real estate market was, they were able to make that promise as boldly because things have changed. They wanted to try and position themselves differently. How do you go about identifying what you need to be known for and how you want the market to see you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a very hard process to do on your own. Very hard process to do on your own. And for some reason, I mean, maybe because I built hundreds of brands, I was able to do it for myself when I started in this space. So usually I'd say, hey, sit across, even if it's ChatGPT. And it really comes down to who are you and who are them and how can you help? And so I'll kind of break those things down. You're absolutely right with how people care more who you are than what you sell these days. And because even so, like, you can probably go out there and find any of the information you would get inside of a coaching program on YouTube somewhere, or ask ChatGPT. I mean, you can literally even feed ChatGPT YouTube videos and turn it into a coach, and be able to you can do crazy things these days. But what people are really paying for these days is they're paying for leadership. They're
Yeah.
paying to
Yeah.
be, is this someone who leads in their life, right? Is this someone who leads in their family? Is this someone who leads in their relationships, leads in their business? Do I have that value with them? Or as we would say, inside of as Eugene Schwartz would say inside of breakthrough advertising, is there identification, which is that level 5 sophisticated market. Being after unique mechanism breaks at levels 3 and 4, the only thing that remains is identification, or I think if he lived in the 21st century, he would say brand. It's the only thing that people really resonate with. So people have to align with you before they can know, like, and trust you to buy. So that to be said, if I were to tell someone, hey, how do you build your brand? Well, the first thing that you need to do is you need to audit the leadership inside of your life. Where are you leading yourself and others, and where are you not? Because that's going to be what it comes down to at the end of the day. If you are saying that you're an email copywriter, but you don't have your own list, well, you should probably start writing to your own list to have that congruency come in place, right? If you're saying that I see this a lot with health coaches who, they were sick, and so they did a crazy regimen that they learned from somebody else, and then now they try teaching that regimen, but they don't actually still eat the same way that they did on that regimen. They don't maintain their health. So the first thing is really identifying that gap in leadership, right? Where's that gap in leadership that I have? The second thing is, what are the values that I have that I want my clients to also share with me? Because the beautiful thing about a personal brand is, if you do it right, then it brings the people you want to work with and it repels the people you don't want to work with. So for me, part of my brand is tattoos and whiskey and old motorcycles and cars and muscle cars and things like that. And when I start working with clients, I find out that they own motorcycles, they like cigars and whiskey, they restore cars, they play guitar like I do. Like, these are not things that I need to consciously necessarily say. But because the
Mm-hmm.
brand is built around me and who I am and what my affinities are, then it brings those kind of people in. And so many people they want to work with big clients, let's say, or high paying clients, that they're willing to accept anything. So they become anything for everyone. Instead of saying, hey, I am this person and I'm actually going to put my values out there so that I repel the people who I don't want to work with. And every time you push people away, you just pull in the right people that much stronger. And so if you're afraid to share your faith, you're afraid to share your beliefs, you're afraid to share whatever because you feel like you have to be business all the time, that's just so not true. You don't have to be business all the time. In fact, I have clients who have very well-known brands who almost never talk about business, but they get so many people reaching out to them because the business people a lot of times have business figured out at that level, but they need to figure out marriage. They need to figure out kids. They need to figure out faith. They need to figure out these other areas of life. So it's first identifying those leadership gaps and putting your values and who you are out there. And then the third thing is just figuring out what people really want that you can help them get, right? Like, what's that thing that's just super sexy and seductive? What's that woman in the red dress for that person that, that you want to work with? Is it brand? Is it legacy? Is it money? Is it dating? Is it sex? Is it a good relationship? Is it a clean bill of health? Is it being able to run with your kids again and not get tired? I mean, what is that, right? And being able to find that thing and then say that thing in kind of a unique way, right? Because you don't want to be the person who says, I help coaches add an extra 20K a month through email copywriting. It's like, man, like we've seen that a million times over. I help busy dads and professionals lose weight while keeping the foods that they love. Like, how many times have you seen that damn message? I know I have a lot. And so it's being able to do those things where audit your leadership inside your life, package your values and package yourself out there, figure out what people want and help them get it. And then the fourth thing is try to say it in new and different ways, right? And if you can do that, and we can talk about some principles of kind of how to bind all of those together. And I have 4 tenets for a strong brand that I think people should follow. If you can do all of that, and you can, maybe have a little bit of self-awareness as well, or work with somebody or ask ChatGPT to tell you the things you might not know about yourself and who you are as a leader, that is what's going to be able to help package your brand and move you forward, if that makes sense.
This is really good. That's really, really good. I love that gap in leadership concept. That's really fresh for me. That's a really great perspective. Like, really, I wrote it down and I was like, damn, yeah, because there's so many people that don't get that. Whether it's health coaches, whether it's business coaches, whether it's,
Yep.
this is why there's so many jokes about gurus, right? Because like, how many gurus are congruent? Where's all their source of income? It's not coming from the thing that they're teaching. So it's like, that's fundamental. And it's also a really good point about email copywriters and not having an email list of their own. I like that. I think it's a really good perspective. Yeah.
I've seen so many email copywriters. I've seen so many, especially Facebook ads people. If you're a Facebook ads person, but you've never ran ads for yourself, I have seen sales explode. And part of it too is when you do it for yourself, you kind of put yourself in the client's shoes. It's like, you might, hey, we have $5,000 a month ad spend with this particular client. When it's your own 5,000, it's not like you're playing with Monopoly money anymore. That ROAS has to be good. You feel the pain yourself. So getting your own skin in the game, right? And then I can, raise my hand and be like, hey, I'm in the process of launching my YouTube channel like I've been the last 3 years. There's things that are, as a provider, often you're the mechanic with a broken car inside of your garage. But to your best of your ability, how are you spending extra time on the weekends to get that thing fixed up? How are you trying to get ahead? How are you making ground in that so you can be congruent? Because there's going to be a level of power in how you speak, a level of power in how you sign clients, a level of power in how you relate and how you command authority in the market that you can't fix with mindset. You can't fix with a good brand. You can't fix with anything unless you're actually doing the work and you're congruent with what you're requiring of others to do.
And I think the simple one that we could say maybe for copywriters is, besides the email list or besides, let's say, even posting on social media, it's like, are you able to sell yourself and your services? If you can't sell your own services, are you a good copywriter? Or are you working on the skill to the point where you're going to become a good copywriter? Because the biggest question I've been receiving on the YouTube channel is, Matthew, make a video on outreach. And I'm like, okay, I understand where the question is coming from, but at the same time, if you're not able to come up with a captivating email to get somebody's attention, and you're selling them captivating emails that get their clients' attention, there is a gap right there in the way you've called it. No, there's a gap in leadership. How are you going to? This is a really great way to indicate. Like, this is a great indicator that you're not as good as at copywriting, at the skill of copywriting, as you might think you are, and you probably should work on it a little bit. Because I've had no formal outreach training. I haven't had a course that taught me here's how to write cold emails. But I've also got like 100 copywriting clients, and when I review outreach emails, I'm always spotting stuff that could be more compelling. And it's like, why? It's just because I know the market, I know what business owners care about, and I'm a copywriter, so I know like how to. I'm just talking to the different market, like
For sure.
You just talk, So, but I really appreciate you sharing that. That's actually that's really good stuff. It's very, very good. I got my notes. I've already finished a couple pages over here. So okay, so you talked about I think you call it the 4 tenets. The 4 tenets of a strong brand. Is that right? What's that about? What's that whole concept?
So great question. So it's a framework that I call rare persona. And I noticed that there's 4 rare persona. It's a rare persona. And there's 4 things that I've noticed that the people who stand a head and shoulder above everyone else in terms of their brand inside of the space, whether they're gurus or not, the people who, they just have the eyeballs when no one else does. They get the engagement, they get the clients, they get the inbound. There's 4 things that they're consistently doing that the typical I'm going to go post on Facebook or post on LinkedIn person isn't doing. And there's actually inside of it, there's 4 lies that people are following inside their personal brand that is causing them to just be tossed aside and disregarded and just kind of, hey, you're just like the rest. And if you actually do the opposite of those 4 things, you can build up rarity, which is really what status is built on. Status and authority is built on being a rare person, doing rare things, having rare results. That's what it is.
I like that.
If you're like, why is a Rolex so expensive? Well, because they don't make as many as they make Timexes, right? Things like Louis Vuitton and these fashion brands have become famous now for when they don't sell things, they burn them so that they keep that rarity. So rarity creates that status and it creates that authority. So why don't we just dive in and we just talk about the kind of the things that people are messing up on and like the 4 deadly sins of branding, and then we'll tell them what they should do instead. How about? Cool. All right. So the biggest lie in personal branding, that is the thing that trips most people up, is be authentic. Authenticity is not a word. And if you ever think about when someone is saying, hey, I'm just being authentic, I'm just being me, are they ever justifying their good behavior or their bad behavior?
That's a good question. Yeah,
it's always something they know they shouldn't be doing, and they're trying to get you to agree with it. And so it sounds great when Brene Brown says be authentic, and you're like, yes, it sounds great, and it sells pop psychology and pop self-help books. But what we're actually looking for is we're not looking for authenticity in a brand, because you can be 17 different people in a single day. You can be a different person before you have your coffee, after you have your coffee, before you read your Bible, after you read your Bible. Different person when you get off a sales call and you close versus you get off a sales call and they give you a BS objection that you couldn't solve and now you're pissed. So you can be all these different people all throughout the day. And so does that mean we bring every version of ourselves, the pissy version before our coffee, the excited version after the sales call, and we just have no filter when it comes to our brand? Absolutely not. So what we need to do is we need to trade authenticity for congruency. All right. Who is my brand? Who is that person? And I like the old Matthew McConaughey quote of, my hero is me in 5 years. So what if your brand wasn't Matthew now, Sky now? What if it was Matthew and Sky 5 years from now? And we build the brand around that person. And then every single day we have this image of ourselves that we can live up to, this thing that holds us accountable. Hey, am I actually showing up? If I picture myself 5 years from now, maybe I'm speaking at a conference and I come up to Matthew, you're there too, and we have a conversation. Am I acting in integrity right here, right now in this moment, that I would be so excited to see you because I know I did you so right in this podcast interview, or so right in our interactions, or so right in our DMs, or so right by my content? And so having that congruence point, and that doesn't mean be fake either. The other reason why people like authenticity is because I'm about to share the next thing, the next big lie and the deadly sin that people fall into. But we be congruent, but also be genuine, right? Don't try to package everything for something it's not. Don't be the crying LinkedIn guy who I had to fire. Remember the CEO? I had to fire all my people and I'm crying for, right? Like I would probably cry too, but I wouldn't post it on LinkedIn because that's not what that is for. So be congruent to that person, whether that's a future self, whether that's an alter ego, whether that's your psycho-cybernetics version of you, whatever it is. But be congruent with that and build all of the brand around that. So does that make sense for the first lie and then like the first tenet of the rare persona?
I really like that because everybody talks about authenticity, and it's a word I've used a lot for my brand. And I think I've been using it in a different way based on what you've said, because I again, like like you said, you want to create a certain, you want to put out a certain image, right? You want to say this is what the brand, what we stand for. And obviously, because we're imperfect, like we cannot always hit that. It depends on like before morning coffee, right? So I almost think of it now as like authenticity to the point where you show who you are, but at the same time, it's aspirational. So it's like, who do you always lean towards? So being congruent with the person that, you want the brand to be. And I like that a lot because, when I'm traveling, for example, I'm not the most productive but I've never wanted to be the most productive. I don't want to be this certain entrepreneur that's like got this rigid routine. So for me, the aspirational identity is that I get stuff done when I need to get it done, but I also have a life outside of that. And
Yeah.
when I pushed myself to be that person, I've also found personal like growth in that by the fact that I put my brand out to be a certain way, because you no longer can hide behind stuff. So I like that a lot. I think a lot of people will just say, oh yeah, I'm just going to be me, and then people accept me the way I am. It's like, yeah, that's fine, in certain contexts, if you've got personal friends outside of business. But when you're building a brand, you have to carry a certain, you're like you said, leading, right? So if you're going to lead, you gotta step up, and you gotta hold yourself to a certain standard. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a really great perspective shift.
Absolutely. I love it, man. And yeah, and like there's going to be people who they want that lifestyle too of, hey, I work when I work, I play when I play, I travel, I have freedom. And those are going to be the people who gravitate towards you. Where for me, I'm kind of a grinder. And so like Gary Vee, who I grew up on, when I was first starting my first businesses, him being like, yeah, I work 14 hours a day and I hustle my face off and everything like that. That really resonated with me at the time. And so who you are, and being congruent to that is just so important. And that's why the second thing is really, really powerful. So the second big lie or mistake, or I call them deadly sins sometimes, that people have inside of personal branding is that they try branding to the niche or branding to the guru. Meaning, I'm a business coach. So what I'm going to do is Traffic and Funnels is one of the biggest business coaching brands in the world. So I'm going to go and create my own company, and it's going to be called Funnels and Funnels. And I'm going to make it black and gold just like they did. Hermosi, his book was purple. I'm going to come out with a book that's purple because, he must know something, right? If it worked for him, it must work for me. And this, kind of works in other areas of your life, right? Like it works inside of your habits to some extent. It works inside your marketing mechanics in some sense, right? But it doesn't work inside your brand, because your brand is the external facing part of what I believe is your calling. So if you have a purpose of being here on this life, you have an internal facing version of that, which is your identity, which is what people work on. They psycho-cybernetics themselves. They would do all that work with the identity. That's for you. But your brand is actually that same coin. It's just the external facing, how everyone interacts with your identity and with your calling and with your purpose and with what you're here to do on this earth is through your brand. Most people will never meet you, but they will meet your brand. So then when you try to say, hey, I was created to be one of 8 billion on this planet, but I'm not going to recognize that. And instead, I'm going to try to copy someone who was really successful because I want to be successful. You're not actually giving people that opportunity to interact with your own identity, your own values, your own experience, your own story, your own life. And more so, what you're doing, if you think about this in kind of a more mindset level, is you're actually devaluing yourself, because you're saying, I can't be successful with my story. I can't be successful with where I came from. I can't be successful with the mistakes I've made. I can't be successful. And you disqualify yourself and say, well, I just got to be a little bit more like Hermosi, a little bit more like Tony Robbins. Got to be like Matthew. I got to be like Ian. I got to be like fill in the blank, right? Got to be like somebody else in order for me to like really, really get there. I need to make more jokes and do stand-up comedy, and then maybe I'll be a good email copywriter. I need to do this. I need to do that, right? It's not true. Yeah. What you need to do is you need to be more yourself. And so while the people who are losing this brand game are trying to copy others, the winners are going all in on themselves. And they're branding to themselves, not to their niche. And what's funny enough is when you brand to yourself, you will actually create your own niche. Because you're no longer playing the copywriting game. You're no longer playing the email game. You're no longer playing the brand game or the coaching game. You're playing the me game. And there's going to be people who are going to hear your voice, who have been waiting for someone like you to come into their lives. And they're going to recognize you because you are being congruent and you are basing this off of your own self instead of trying to copy somebody else. And they'll hear that that originality. I almost said authenticity. Look at me. They'll hear that originality. They'll hear that congruence. They'll hear that trueness to yourself. They'll recognize that, and then they'll fall in line there. Some people will become clients. Some people will just be happy subscribers. Some people will refer. Some people will buy your high ticket. Some people will buy your low ticket. Some people will go all the way with you. But you're going to you're able to assemble your own niche, because you cannot tell me that the same person who would hire Hermosi as a business coach would be the same person who maybe hires you to be a coach to teach them how to copyright and how to grow a copywriting business, or hire, someone like Taylor Welch now, who has a family and threw his entire way of doing things out the window when he had kids. The same person isn't going to hire all three of those people. And so if you're not actually putting yourself out there and creating your own niche, then you're not going to have success with your brand. Can't brand hack. Nope. And if you do brand hack, there is one tip for brand hacking. One tip. It's take something that's really old and then make it new. So The Intelligent Investor, right? Millionaire Next Door, right? Who actually does this? Actually, Taylor does this all the time with his stuff. You look at the last Consultant Next Door, intelligent or wealthy consultant. Like there's all these different things that are all, kind of brand hacked from those titles. But yeah, go find an old book that everyone has read. Like I probably, just come by my office and look at any of these, right? But go find an old book that everyone's read, and then insert your own mechanism, and boom, people will be like, hey, this kind of sounds familiar, and you're able to ride a little bit of the coattails. But that's really the other thing that you can brand hack too is it's less of a brand hack and more of a brand creation strategy. It's what I do is take the things that you love and then turn your brand around them. So like for me, whiskey and leather and old books and things like that are all part of my brand. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, makes sense that I have kind of a whiskey bar background behind me. I have books behind me on my thing. You go to my site, my colors are cognac color, right? And charcoal, and they're all sort of inspired, right? By the things that I love in my life, which is funny because I rarely drink these days, which is crazy. But I still love the idea of craft whiskey and craft bourbon and kind of that vibe and that energy and that feeling of craftsmanship and companionship and high end and all that. But take the things that you love and then start turning that into your brand. And you can do some really crazy cool things with that. So anyway, that's how you brand hack. That's a little nugget for you guys. It's a little extra. Let's talk about number 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Just one thing before we even get into that. I think there's another thing that people miss out on when they build a brand that they think they should have versus what they should have. It's like, I've seen this with people like, let's say, Tony Robbins. He can speak for 10, 12, 14 hours. And a lot of coaching clients have asked me, how they can be more productive and how they can perform better. I say, well, you first got to be in your zone of genius, or what you're good at, your calling, as you called it. It's like you got to lean into where you're meant to be. Tony can do that because he's Tony. He likes it. That's his gift. He's good at that. You don't go up against somebody that's built for that. So if you start trying to, and Gary Vee, for example, that's his way of how he does things. I can't go against that because it's not how I'm built. I'm not a very rigid routine person. Personally, I'm just not. My brain is a lot all over the place. I'm a little bit more creative. I have energy and explosions of energy throughout the day. I don't have like a stable energy the whole day long. So it would just be an absolute nightmare for client success if you were to try and build your brand around somebody else's brand, because now you're setting up an expectation that you're going to deliver a certain thing that seems quite familiar. You attract that kind of crowd, and then that doesn't actually match your service. It's like, like for example, with my clients, I find that because I like to travel and I like to have more time for myself and do things outside of business, that when I work with copywriters, a lot of copywriters, they have that same goal. They don't want to be working all day. They don't want to build billion-dollar empires. They just want to live their life and have the freedom to make choices for themselves without having to work, for everybody all day long. So when they work with me, they actually really appreciate the way I like to work with my clients, because I built it for my own like lifestyle goals, and they like that lifestyle too. So I love it perfectly clicks with client success. So I think a lot of people will find that their marketing is the exact opposite of it like sets all the expectations wrong. So you have like a nightmare with client success later. And I've seen that so many times with big brands. So yeah, just wanted to add that because I've really seen that a lot. So yeah, let's get into number 3.
Yeah. I'm so glad you did. And yeah, and a lot of times too, the people are coming to you again for that leadership or the qualities that you've developed. Like you've been able to create these really rare results for yourself where you can work X amount of hours per week, make X amount of dollars and travel the world and have fun while doing it. That is something that even though ChatGPT could tell me how to write emails, maybe, I don't know if it's very good. I haven't tried it for that. Or tell me how hypothetically to get clients. It doesn't mean that the thing that you have can't brush off on them. One of the first coaches who I hired in this space, who got me off the backboard, literally doing zero revenue. Then we did 32K the next month after losing that first business. That first agency, was just an absolute eat nails sales guy who I needed, because I was always the brand and marketing guy. And I was like, there's going to be times where I'm going to need to be a cutthroat dog in me kind of salesperson. And, this guy had that. And so having him rub off on me and get in proximity, that's the other thing. If you're the average of the 5 people who you spend the most time with, right? Whether that even just be who you listen to on YouTube and you spend time with digitally, people are buying for those reasons because they want to spend time with you. Are you the type of copywriting coach? Are you the type of copywriter? Are you the type of sales coach? Are you the type of whatever that people want to spend time with because they resonate with you? So anyway, I digress. We could go down a huge rabbit hole here. But let's get into number 3.
We'll have to do that
part 2,
another
right?
time.
Number 3, third deadly sin of personal branding is to go wide. I need to have 1 million followers. I need to have 100,000 followers. They did a survey recently. The average Instagram or social media influencer who, verified check, has a good following, all that, makes an average of $56,000 a year US. It's not even 10K months.
It's pretty low, yeah.
So, that's actually lower, because I think median income in the US is around 74,000 last time I saw. So, it's significantly lower than what the average person is making inside of the United States. And these are just US numbers. But to give you a perspective, wide does not pay the bills. Wide does not pay the bills. Even so, like Mr. Beast, he jokes he's like, hey, people think that I'm just so loaded. They have no idea that every dollar I get, I just put right back into my business. And does he have assets? Sure. Does he have great growing businesses and brands? Sure. But he himself, as an influencer, quote unquote, he's like giving away more Lamborghinis than he actually drives, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go wide. You don't want to go wide. What instead you want to go is you want to go deep. All right. I have clients who have 3,000 followers on Instagram who have 8-figure businesses and sell their starting offers at like 50 to 100K. You're not going to know them unless you know them. And once you're kind of in their world, they have some other things to kind of get you in the door. But I have especially one client in particular, just to start working with their team, is 50K for them to start going through the process and doing due diligence and kind of the things that they do.
Yeah.
And so
interesting.
They're able to do that because they decided to go deep on working with a specific type of person versus trying to water down the message to try to attract everybody. Even Hermosi himself came out and he did end of 2024. Yeah, I think it was end of 2024. He's like, hey, these are the things that worked. These are the things that didn't. And one of them was going so wide. Because when you go wide, the value that you have is in solving progressively harder problems for a certain type of person. If you can figure out how to solve progressively harder problems for the same type of person, number one, your retention is better. Number two, you're able to charge far more, because you could probably go into somebody, let's say, do you ever do consulting for clients who have copywriters on team and you come into their mess and like help turn around their stuff?
I typically consult more on marketing, but I review the copy as well.
Yeah. So like when you're doing that, are you just bringing copywriting to the table, or are you also bringing marketing knowledge, media buying knowledge, sales funnel knowledge, conversion math, like all these CRO, like all these different things?
Yeah, usually I'll have like I'll diagnose like what the real issues are and figure out what their issues are. But because I've worked with so many 8-figure, offers and in our space and like internet marketing, I could come in there and say, hey, look, I know what it looks like. I know what a marketing team that makes 8 figures looks like. So I'll figure out what's missing here and let's fix that. And then you can get to 8 figures. And it's, I
Yep.
just want to bring up another example because you brought up Hormozi. I remember watching something Iman Gaji. I mean, he's very, very big right now. A lot of people are talking about what Iman's been up to. Iman has actually also said that at some point they were getting like 200 to 300 million views, impressions on their short form reel content on like TikTok and Instagram. It's not, they're not buyers. It biases, like the broader you go, the more it's optimized for entertainment. Because like think of like social media
Yeah.
platforms. Like what is the point of them? What do they want? They want to keep people on their platform and consuming the content and to stay there. Which is, so if you want to try and win in the algorithm game, you have to keep people on the platform. So what are you going to bias for? You're going to bias for entertainment. You're going to bias for open loops. You're not going to actually have, if you solve the problem, then they leave the platform. So you actually optimize for them to leave. So then you're not going to have that kind of level of reach, and you're not going to attract the kind of people. So I've noticed that as well. Like with so many of the clients I've worked with, like one client, I think I mentioned this in the previous interview, but we had 300 or 500,000 subscribers, somewhere around there. And when we grew the account to like 1.5 million, 3 times more, the revenue had only gone up by like 33% or something like that. And I was like, this is so funny that this account has 3 times more followers and yet the revenue didn't even double. It wasn't a surprise to me because I was thinking like, to go that mainstream, we just went more and more and more biz op instead of focusing on solving things for the person that we were originally talking to. But it just makes so much more sense to go
Yeah.
deeper. And I don't have a very big brand, for like my own coaching practice. I don't have a very like mass following, and I don't think I'd want that because I just recognize like the people that have the problem, that the people that I want to help, there's actually not as many as people think. Most markets is actually quite a lot less people than that like imaginary total addressable market. I could go and say, hey, here's how to get started in copywriting. Here's what copywriting is, and you might get 5 million people that are curious. But how many of those people are going to put, let's say, $10,000 into their copywriting education over the next 5 years? Suddenly, you've got a very small amount of people, and even smaller amount of people that will invest time, not just the money, and invest the time and completely work on it. Yeah, so I'm with you.
Yeah. Total addressable market is such a funny thing too, because yeah, like no one actually gets the total addressable market. And you yourself are going to have a completely different total addressable market than somebody else because people aren't buying for your market is not the entire market, is the people who are kind of inside of that circle with you, who are your tribe, so to speak, right? Those are your buyers, not the health niche or the copywriting niche or the coaching is a $6 billion industry. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, it's $1 billion
but
industry.
yeah, but it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
if you're like a new age, a spiritual alignment coach, then, someone who's Christian or Muslim, like they're probably not going to buy from you and vice versa. So like the total
even
addressable
though they're
market
in
is
the
never your
same
market,
billion
even though they're
dollar
in the
industry.
same
Yeah,
billions dollar industry. Yeah, it's not gonna work. If you're a fitness coach for moms and I'm a dad, well, we're probably not gonna work together. So yeah, so the total addressable market is never your market. And yeah, to go deep too, this is where those leadership gaps come into play. It's like, hey, like, one of the big things that people need to think about, and this is something I think about a lot too, is like, where can I get better results? Where can I get better results? If I can't get them for a client, where can I get them for myself? Where can I get more knowledge? Where could I be stacking skills? Am I resting on my laurels and say I've kind of learned what I need to learn? Or, can I continue to push and stack skills? Because like you said, you have experience and exposure and seasoning to what these 8-figure offers are and what they need and who they are. But you also have the skill set to be able to diagnose what's wrong and be able to fix what's wrong, which requires, probably 35 different skills all stacked on top of each other. And so it's one
yeah,
person to
yeah.
tell you, hey, this is how you get your first copywriting client. It's another thing to tell someone, hey, here's how you manage client expectations when you have 3 copywriting clients and they all are wanting things right away. So a totally different thing of, hey, this is when you hire a junior copywriter, or how you use GPT underneath you or an AI tool to be able to handle volume because you're at the most. And then another thing to be like, hey, this is how you start a copywriting agency, or how you bring in and expand your services and you bring in a funnel builder or somebody else. That is the same person, right? They just walk different levels. It's a lot different. The person who tells you how to get your first client versus the person who tells you how to sell your business for millions. That's a completely different conversation. And everybody wants to figure out how to get their first client, but it's a very, very small circle who actually are going to be able to exit their companies. And so go wide. No. Don't go wide. go deep.
It's good. It's very, very good. I think a lot of people underestimate how valuable their existing connections are, because as you talked about, your brand is that real estate in somebody's mind. So whether you know it or not, you already have a brand, even if you're not active, because there's a certain reputation that you have within the industry. The people that know you, they talk about you a certain way. I'll have, there's my tech guy. That's the real estate space he has in my head. He's called my tech guy, and when I introduce him to people, or when I'm just talking and I want to refer, I'm like, let me connect you with my tech guy. That's the real estate. Let me connect you with my tech guy. So his brand currently is my tech guy, or the tech guy that Matthew trusts, at least in my space. Now so he's not creating that narrative. He's let me create it right now. So if you're watching this, you need to be more intentional about that, because you're currently just the tech guy. I don't know if you want to be called the tech guy, So, but to that point, is like, if you're a copywriter, that's what people might know you as. Is like, oh, this is a really reliable copywriter. He writes really good emails. Cool. If that's what you want to be known for. But if you want to work with some of the biggest brands in the world, you might have to do some work there, because that's currently what the narrative is. And then you might just be that's the copywriter I'll call on when we need a copywriter, because that's currently the box that you're in. You're in that, oh, he's a copywriter, let's hire him then. Whereas you want to be in the box where it's like, let's hire Sky.
Yeah,
let's get him.
sure.
Let's get him on board to help us to get this result. Because that's how it sounds when I hear people talk. It's like they say, we want to get somebody on who can solve this problem or can get this result for us. That's when people jump in, especially with our space, right? We're not corporate, so it's not like this corporate space where there's always all these boxes. It's like, we want to get this result. If there's a lot of internet marketers that like startup, they operate like startups do. Let's get this guy to get this result. Okay, cool. Who can do that? Who's the best in the world at webinar? Okay, is this guy. Who's the best in the world at this? Okay, this guy. And then that's how they do it. So
it's how they do it. And like you said, if you're putting yourself in that box, if I'm just a copywriter, then they will call you when, hey, we need a copywriter, and you will not have any kind of leverage in that conversation to negotiate.
Deals already established.
Deals already established. To be like, hey, we can pay you $3,000 a month. We're expecting this from you. Yes or no? If not, I'm just going to go to the next person who has copywriter on their Facebook profile or their LinkedIn profile, and we want to see if they'll say yes, right? So yeah, you're not creating that distinction for yourself. The last thing, the big mistake that I see people making with personal brands is that they are so caught up in telling. Let me tell you how great I am. Let me tell you how awesome I am. Let me tell you, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about that. Let me flex. Let me share my results. Let me, just talk, right? And kind of the biggest example, and it's funny and it's kind of fun to throw around, is the here in my garage, right? You think back to the Ty Lopez ad, here in my garage, but more than these Lamborghinis, right? And so we're just so huge. Everyone thinks they're the shit. Everyone thinks they're the best. Everyone thinks they're the greatest. You log on to Facebook, you log on to LinkedIn, you log on to anywhere where, people are going, and they're just throwing weight around, right? And a lot of times throwing rocks too, by the way. And this is something that's become a lot worse in the last year. And as someone who threw plenty of rocks in my time, I've actually made a policy not to throw rocks in my marketing as much as possible, because number one, there's ways to call people up without calling them out. And number two is that when you think about wanting to hire a leader, right? If you are hiring leadership inside your life, when someone is buying from you, are they wanting to follow a leader who's bitter, who focuses on talking smack on the competition? Are they focused on wanting to hire leaders who rant about politics or try to correct people on beliefs that have nothing really to do with them? Or what's the old phrase? Losers focus on winners, winners focus on winners, or on winning rather. Losers focus on winners, winners focus on winning. So it's like, when you're throwing rocks, you're not playing your own game. And what's crazy is people have gotten so used to throwing rocks at their competition or the other mechanism or the old way that they started throwing rocks at the people who'd become their clients. And let me tell you what, you do not want to get on a sales call with that person who comes in from that energy, because if they're going to hop on a sales call with someone who is throwing rocks at them, you are bringing in someone who is just beat up in life.
They're about to throw rocks at you as well, though,
They'll throw
most
rocks at
likely.
you,
Yeah.
or they've been broken and bruised and battered and have pushed off so much responsibility in life to everything else. You'll never be able to close them. They'll be in your pipeline for years. It'll always be some reason. They'll never work with you. They'll never have the money because you're bringing in victim-y leads at that point.
Or worst case, you do close them.
Yeah, right. You'd say, "Hey, let's do," and I've done a few of those, and you come up with some kind of creative deal, and you always regret it.
Yep. Always. Wow, that's really good. I wouldn't say it's lazy marketing, because I think there is a place for calling out tactfully, or calling up, maybe let's call it that. But I think it is. I think a lot of lazy marketers do use it as their go-to. Is like,
Yeah.
oh, let me differentiate myself. So let me tell everybody why everybody else is really bad. And it's like, oh, what a great place to start the conversation from. Let's set up everybody that's reading to be critical and like looking at all the flaws and all the things that aren't good. And then by the time the post ends, they're supposed to be optimistic about everything you say about how you're different, right? Because they're not going to be critical anymore, right? Because they've been critical for the first 5 minutes. Now it's like, oh yeah, no, but you're different. You're very, very different.
Very different. Yeah, very. So yeah, so no, it's a pandemic right now that's happening. There's people throwing rocks and being bitter, and yeah, it's like, and more people are catching on. I saw a post the other day, and Facebook is where my brand lives. It's kind of where I've gone deep, and I figured out a lot about that platform. But I saw a post that someone said, if you're watching this, shout out to you. I forget who it was, but it was you know what people look for in a personal trainer? Someone who talks about how they're better than other personal trainers on Facebook. It's like, it's so true. It's like, no, like you're looking for someone who like, hey, I can get you results. I can help you work through diet. I can help you work through, hey, when you feel like, quitting on your prep, like let's figure out how to dial you in. Like there's so much more that people are looking for. And so instead of telling people and flexing and renting Lamborghinis or using AI photos to try to put you on a yacht when you've never been on a boat in your life, what you should be doing instead is you should be showing.
Mm-hmm.
Showing. So there's 2 or 3 ways you can do this. Really, they all come down to what I have coined over these years as subconscious authority signals. And they're things that we use inside of our communication. They arise from evolutionary biology and psychology and all these things, how we assign status inside of packs and tribes, even back to the animal kingdom, because we aren't so different in some ways, although we're fantastically different in others. But what it boils down to is, again, this idea of leadership. How can I show leadership? How could I show quality? How could I show an aspect of being premium? Not luxury, but premium. How can I show high quality? How can I show leadership? How can I show authority? So I don't have to tell people how great I am. I don't need to tell you how great I am at brands. When you go to my profile and you go through my lead magnets, and they have great branding. I have so many people come to me like, Sky, I love your brand. I'm like, great. That's what I do. Your brand's so awesome. Your brand's just, I resonate with it. I'm like, really? Like, cool. No one else kind of had a brand like me before this. So that to say, like, you want to be showing, not telling. And we can kind of talk about what some of these authority signals are. A really, really easy one for anybody to do is to simply build in public.
Yeah, I like that one. It's a good one, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, especially when you're starting out. It's like, to be able to share the wins and the losses, especially to be able to share the losses and be able to not need to put it in packaging. To not wallow in it either, but not need to put it in packaging and be like, hey, we messed up. This happened. We got a client fire us and I had to refund the money, and they were right. They were absolutely right to it, or, vice versa, whatever. Like that creates the leadership inside of the marketplace, is when you don't have anything to hide. You don't have anything to protect. and you just show up um, inside of your content. Of course, using things that also help build your authority as well, because there's ways to use fonts with authorities. There's ways to use color with authorities. There's way to use video framing and camera angles and things like that that Hollywood would use to create authority figures versus, smaller, more powerless figures inside of film. And so there's ways to start using these heuristics and this psychology to create that authority, or rather reflect that authority, because at the end of the day, you can't really create authority from nowhere. Just like our process started first with self-auditing our leadership, your brand can only reflect the leadership and the authority that you actually have on the inside. Can only reflect that. And the problem is most people are so bad at their brand, or their brand has not had work in so long, that it's like a dirty, broken mirror. It's not actually accurately reflecting. And so you could be a small-time copywriter with a great brand who has a brighter reflection of their authority than someone who maybe has been doing this a lot longer and has a lot more results and has more clients and has sold more through email or, whatever. But you're able to have the bigger and the better brand than they do, because you're more accurately reflecting. You're reflecting more of that authority, even if that's actually less total authority than someone else might have. And this is like someone like me coming in with, just getting a car repossessed and zero revenue and, back against a wall. This is where I could actually create a brand and be able to step into the space and start kicking some ass, was because I just took the last, at that point, 10 or so years of me freelancing, working corporate marketing, running my first agency. I just took all that and accurately packaged that and showed that to people, which automatically assumed, man, this guy must have tons of clients. He must be doing great in revenue. He definitely knows his stuff. Let's go ahead and let's have a conversation, right? Or let's be open to a conversation.
Yeah.
And so if you can just focus on not telling people how great you are, but just showing them it. And even in the small things, like people, they respect you the more that you're fit. They respect you when you are well put together. They respect you when you groom and you dress. And the small things that might not seem that small, when you're put together and you show that you respect yourself, people start respecting you more too. So anyway, we could dive in on this one forever. But does that make sense of the showing, not telling?
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's a very, very important concept for copywriters to double down on, because you're also going to do it for your clients, especially with clients that, the email will start with like, oh, I made $5 million, and like you're already starting the email like, some markets will resonate because they need the guru, like 18 to 25-year-old men might like that lead. But if you're talking to someone in their mid 30s who has already been building businesses for the last 15, 20 years, I don't know, like they're like, okay, whatever, like what
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, great, versus saying something like, the first million I made was probably, like I was the most I was the worst with my money when I made my first million. And the way I spent that money was just the way I built my teams, the way I hired, the way I paid coaches. I just wasn't effective with it. And, the next million I made, I actually took home 30% more. And here are 3 ways that I actually was able to do that hopefully saves you on your next million. Yeah, I'm not like telling you, I'm this big guy. I'm just saying, hey, here's some useful stuff that I found on my own journey, right? So I tell copywriters, you spilled my secret, gonna have to paywall this now, but but I tell copywriters, I'm like, why don't you just share your story? Like, why do you have to try and be somebody you're not? Why do you have to start your post with, here are 3 subject lines that work? No one cares. Why don't you just talk about what you're up to, what you're working on? Share your journey. You don't have to like save yourself all that stress of trying to be somebody else and trying to sound like every other post. Share your journey. Learn a couple of skills, like learn to take some decent photos. I was very, very introverted. Like I identified that way, Sky. I didn't want to be on camera. I especially didn't want to be on video. That was the last thing I wanted to do. I actually remember I was in Montreal 3 years ago, and I thought, okay, all right, I got to start my video stuff. So I got a little gimbal from DJI, and I so I had this gimbal, and I was like, like up, and I was in a relatively nice apartment, good light. So I thought, okay, this is my chance. I spent 6 hours that day trying to record selfie videos, and I struggled so much. And I was just like, I can't do this. And at the end of the day, I didn't end up posting anything. I actually didn't end up posting anything. And I just sat down and I was like, this is hard. This is really, really hard. But I just said, you know what? Like, I'm going to figure it out. And I
Yep.
figured it out. And when I did eventually figure it out, I figured out a different way to do it, because I don't particularly enjoy being on selfie video, although I've learned a little bit better how to do it. But it's been so rewarding, like building my brand. And even before getting on video, because I don't think most people even have to get on video for the most part, at least in the early days. You'll make so much money before you even need to get on video that you'll realize, like you'll know why you'll want to be on video. Like, I got on video because I knew how well my brand was doing for me before I got on video. I started to make so much more money. I started to have people tell me stuff that they appreciate about my brand, certain expectations. Like we talked about at the beginning of the call, like so many things changed in my life once I started posting consistently. But you could learn it. I'd say like the minimum, at least learn to get some good photos. Even pay somebody. Just pay somebody. Like pay somebody to get some good photos.
Pay somebody to get some good photos. I got this really up and coming photographer, videographer to take my headshots a number of years ago. He lives here in Boise. I ran into the other day, and we were going to update them at some point. But pay, especially in the age of AI, like you
Yes.
guys, you can
Yes.
spot an AI photo from a million miles away. I know they get better and better, and maybe one day you won't, right? But again, rare people are leaders and they do rare things. It's super common for everyone to have an AI headshot. What's not common is spending good money. And it wasn't a ton of money for me at the time, or now it's not a ton of money. At the time, it was huge. It was like a $300 or something back when I was making less than 2K a month, or a little over 2K a month in my corporate job, and that to say, like, get some good headshots, get some good headshots, and
Get a good
work
haircut
on
too.
that. Get a good haircut. Yeah. Get a good haircut.
Get a good
Yeah.
haircut. Like get some decent clothes. Get a good photo. You just pay for it. Like just pay for it, because it's just every single. Let's say if you use Facebook as a platform, it's like every single post that you make, doesn't matter what you say in the post, even if your post is, let's say, 5 out of 10 of the potential that you could have reflected. Let's say you're only reflecting at 5 out of 10 of your potential, but you have a good photo. People still seeing your face. You're still relevant. And then they see your face more and more. If it's a good photo, they remember, oh, this guy's like put together. This girl's put together. They're doing something. They're up to stuff. Then you get a bit better and bit better and bit better, But
Yeah, for sure.
there's so many copywriters I work with, and they got like this like weird light. It's like in the distance. It's like below. They're like this at a party from like 6 years ago. I'm like, I don't know. Do personal brands that make $10 million a year in revenue, they want you're about to carry their voice in front of their million follower audience. They look at your personal brand and it's a photo of you like this. like, do you want to start the relationship from that perspective? It's not going to be easy to close them. Leadership gap, like you said.
Leadership gap. Yep, absolutely. And then there's two places where it comes from. Like there's the people who they don't want to admit that that's the reality. Like you see this a lot with people who are more creative, right? When I was in the music space, I learned marketing through being an event promoter and playing in bands and being a DJ and things like that. And yeah, how many people are like, you shouldn't have to be able to market your music or build a brand. If you're good, you should just, people should just like build it and they will come, right? People should find you. Like this is, I know so many people less talented who have way bigger brands, way bigger tours and things like that. That's not right. It should be all about the music. It's like, no, it's not. So you need to accept that, hey, this is the game. If you want more clients, if you don't want more clients, if you're happy where you're at, then by all means, have your photo of you at the party like this. Go for it. But if you want more clients who pay you better, who give you a better lifestyle, then yeah, take a look at that leadership gap. And the second thing is, and I do have to say this for the people who are out there too, is that there's going to be somebody who builds an amazing brand as a copywriter, as a coach, whoever you are listening to this. Why can't it be you? Why can't it be you? And one of the things that when people come and work with me, one of the things I realized that I did is I help show people how they're still qualified for their dreams. Because I'll go through the mindset work to try to remove limiting beliefs. They'll try to go through all these things, right? But they just can't quite see themselves as being that speaker. They can't quite see themselves. Some do, and they come in and we crush it together and we rock it out. But the clients who have kind of the biggest inner transformation from building the brand, funny enough, is they're just looking and waiting to see that jacked person in the mirror. Because your brand is also a little bit like a mirror, right? When you look at yourself, at your website, you look at your LinkedIn, you look at your YouTube, do you like what you see coming back at you? And if you don't like what you see, then, how long are you going to put up with that before you decide to change that, right? Just like
Very
if you were,
difficult to be consistent when you don't like it.
yeah, if you were overweight or underweight at the same time too, I started off as 125 pounds at 18 and got into college and I was like, man, I need to put on some muscle. And so I added 25 pounds of muscle. And I love fitness till this day, but I didn't like what I saw. And so I didn't like that did not accurately reflect me and who I wanted to be. And so I had to change something about it, and learn how to go to the gym and how to eat and how to this and how to that. And so, there's a certain aspect of this that is, hey, like you might not like what you see inside of your brand, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
not an
Yeah.
invitation to ignore your brand. That's an invitation to go figure it out. Or maybe go hire someone to go figure it out or work with AI or something like that. But be able to figure out who you are as a leader and then figure out how to communicate that inside of all the different brand language. And then, yeah, like you'll be able to do some really awesome things. But if you just kind of ignore that and like that shouldn't be important or that's not for me because I can't be the next big thing, I would really challenge you on both fronts and say, this is for you, right? If you have dreams and you have vision, then you have to have brand to be able to help carry that weight. Just like you have to have consistency and courage and persistence and character traits, like all the habits and systems, all these other things, you need brand as well inside of your team, so to speak, or inside of your repertoire in order to be able to actually touch those dreams and go after it. So anyway, I digress.
Well, I really love it, and I have the same message for people because I still feel like such a small fish in such a big pond because I've actually only been in the industry since like 2017. So, I'm relatively new still. Somebody called me a noob the other day, which made me chuckle a little bit, which is nice. And I like that. I want to maintain the student frame, but even just two years into the game, I was making more money than I ever thought I would be able to make. And now I've got a dream life. Like I'm very grateful for where I'm at. I'm very, very happy. But the thing I want to leave with people is I just said to myself, well, what about me? I can do it. Why not? That was like the belief I had. And I was like, I'm very far from, all the dreams and aspirations I want and all the impact I want to create and all the people I want to help. But I'm pretty happy with where I'm at with my life and my career. And it's just because I just went out there and did it. And I've got many clients that I work with and they're on different journeys and they're at different points in their life, but some of them have been in the industry longer than I have. And I'm telling them, I'm like, hey, like, let's just chat about this for a second. Like, you've been in the game 15 years. You can do this too. You've got more experience than me. You have a lot more. You've probably done more work than I have as a copywriter. In many ways, you probably have a stronger skill set than me. Go and do it. And like sometimes
Yeah.
that's all that they need. And they're like, okay, well, because they'll come work with me and they'll see 4 or 5 other people that are like only 2 or 3 years into the game making 20K, 30K a month. And they're like, damn, I'm only making 5K and I've been doing this 10 years. Like I can do this. So sometimes you just need the right people to rebel against, like, and you get that like, okay, well, if they're doing so well, I can do it. But I'm curious, like, how else do you help your clients to build their brands? And I know there's a lot of inner work to figure out like what exactly you want to portray and what you want to put out there. That's been big for me. I spent a lot of time thinking about that, but there must be a lot more to it, especially after working with 500 different brands. There must be a lot to building a personal brand and building the right one.
There's a lot and there's a little at the same time. Probably with copywriting, it's like, hey, there's a lot of levers you can pull, but at the end of the day, it comes down to 2 or 3 guiding principles, right? So there's a lot in the little when it comes to building a brand. The first thing that is required is to understand who they are, right? And so I have a process called Thought Leader DNA that I go through with every client that comes on board with me, whether we're doing coaching or we do done for you as well. I do done for you. And so if we're building out your brand kit, the thing that I've noticed is that people will go out and they'll spend $500, $1,000 at a time hiring someone on Upwork to make logos and colors and brand books and things like that. And they never quite fit, and I'm not cheap to work with by any means. I'm not crazy expensive. I don't think I either, but not cheap to work with. And I've noticed as people have turned down my prices and then went out and spent that same amount over and over and over again over a period of time without gaining ground, because they never actually first got really clear on who they are. So the first thing that needs to happen is you have to be really, really clear on who you are. And it's what we do when we work with clients, is we get really clear. The second thing when I work with clients is how do we get everything congruent, right? So I think there's macro and there's micro elements of your brand. The macro, these are the more marketing terms, right? What's your positioning? What's your offer? What's your big message? What's your why? What's your this? Those are all, just like when we talk about micro and macro economics, it eventually trickles down from GDP and, all of these big things all the way down to, the moving widgets in my own business, right? If you go back to economics and in college, university, but that to say, same is true. You have your macro, your offers, your messaging, your positioning, your authority, your hooks, your talking points, and then you have all the way down to the micros, which is the color filter on the camera, because this is actually, there's a slight filter on this feed that's kind of coming through right now.
Oh, that's cool.
What's the color filter? What are you wearing, right? What are you wearing? What's your backdrop? What are your fonts? What are your colors? And how can they all be telling the same story? How can they all be creating that same association or emotions or feeling that you want with the brand, so that we're using things, at the top and things at the bottom to be able to create that impression? And you see this a lot where you kind of know when you see a brand and the macro and the micro doesn't line up. It's like when you look at someone and they're like, I see this a lot, like a luxury marketing specialist or something like that, or luxury branding or luxury copywriter. And then you go to their website and it looks like trash. It's like, if this was luxury, if I was seeing this from Chanel or Louis Vuitton or something like that, they wouldn't look like this. If I was seeing, someone is saying that they are a freedom coach, or, they have some kind of word like that. And then you look at their profile photo and it's them in a suit instead of them,
instead of them at the beach or something.
At the beach or something like that. You're like, oof, I know what's going on here. Unless that's their thing. Like, I have actually one of my clients, he has like a binary brand, which is, I could be on the suit presenting, or in a suit presenting, or I can be at the beach, because I already did everything I need to be successful in life, and I live completely on my terms. I can help you. And so he kind of has that binary, right? But it's super cool. Yeah, he's awesome. But one of the things is like, is what you're saying actually backed up by the smaller things inside your brand? So, we build out all of that for people and have very lengthy brand guidelines books that we end up handing over at the end, because if you don't have your brand codified and you're any kind of offer owner who has team, you are leaving so many hours of your own time on the table, because you're working with funnel designers, ad designers, copywriters, video editors. How many little dumb things do you have to correct every single month? Because they don't have it in one place that they can refer to before coming to you. Gosh, Mr. Video Editor, how many times do I have to tell you not to use that font, that we use this font instead? Well, where is it written down besides in your Slack channel?
Yeah.
It's not. So they're going to keep coming back to Slack, keep coming back to email, keep coming back inside of your Monday or your ClickUp or whatever you guys use for your product management. And you're going to waste 4 to 8 hours a month sitting back dumb revisions that could have been saved. And you could be working on other things if you actually had all this stuff codified beyond just, hey, these are our colors, these are our logos, but things like, these are our video guidelines, these are our audio guidelines, this is what we do for icons, this is what we do for visual styles, this is what we do for voice and things like that. So that's pretty much the core of what I do. I obviously have different ways of working, much bigger, much smaller, more done with you, more done for you. But the gist of it is, let's get really, really clear on who you are. Let's find all the different language to talk about this brand and to make this brand resonate from the very, very big picture to the very, very small details. Because if you have one without the other, you don't actually have a brand. And then the third thing is, how do we actually launch and codify this thing so that your team can use it? And then of course I do like marketing, consulting, and kind of growth from there. But when we're looking to establish a brand, it's those three things. And then we worry about, okay, let's go kick this off into the world and let's go, create a big splash. Or sometimes it's better to create a small splash and then grow bigger over time. Just depends on the client. But then we can grow from there. But we got to build the vehicle first, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. As a copywriter, I know, because obviously there's a lot that you have to do with personal brands up front. And the good ones, they usually have a really good creative brief or branding identity. Everybody uses slightly different terms depending on their backgrounds. But, one copywriter I worked with had like an 80 pages of in-depth analysis. And some people might be like, oh man, it's too much. But I'm like, yeah, like just like you, I'm like, yeah, because there's something else that I want to mention here that I think is even more painful sometimes for business owners than the revision process is being incongruent in the revision process, because they keep changing what they actually want things to look like based on how they feel that month. It's like, oh, like because your brand looks like this month, and then you watch a couple of Hamosi reels, and then it's like, oh yeah, like you tell the editor, like, we wanted to have a bit more pop and more like biz-oppy vibes. And then the next month, now the editor's making it very, very biz-oppy, but now you're watching somebody like, let's say, Iman Gaji, who makes more Netflix-style production, and now you're like, no, this is too flashy. Let's make it more like... I mean, the team's not going to say it to you directly, but they're kind of like, what book is he reading this month? It's not a good place to be as a leader either. There's another leadership gap there. It just doesn't... It just is very unpleasant as a marketer to have a client that constantly changes what they want, when you can actually say, hey, look, I am actually following the same voice guidelines we discussed last month. You've changed it now. Like that is not a pleasant experience for contractors, and it actually affects team retention too, right? Because now it's like, do I have to keep? Is this a new client every month? Must I treat them as a new client every month? It's unpleasant. So no, I'm a big believer in going very, very deep with the brand, and it's really cool that you go that deep with clients. It's a lot of work, so I have a lot of respect for what you do. If people want to learn more from you, find your secrets, and maybe potentially work with you and go deep with their brands, or copywriters that just want to add you, where can they find you?
Yeah, great question. Should we put together a little bit of a bundle for them, just based off of, I have all these different lead magnets. We could put together something really cool for everybody and be able to do the cool. So, let's see. I'm kind of thinking, and I know since we're recording this, we can cut this part. I'm just thinking, what would be a good link? Because your YouTube is just Matthew Volkwein, right? Like it's, yeah. We'll do, okay. So, yeah. So let me get into my flow here. Give me a second.
Let me
those camera skills. So
yeah.
So best place to connect with me actually is based off of everything we've talked about, of how to find your voice, how to use authority signals, how to be able to gain traction and gain leadership in a market. I've actually created a little bundle for people who are watching this video or listening to this podcast right now. If you go to my website, skykstack.com/Matthew, then you'll be able to get that bundle for absolutely free. You'll get introduced into my world. It'll show you where to go from there. But that'll just be the best way for you guys to connect with me and start getting some immediate action and some immediate traction on what we talked about today.
Thank you. Thanks for using my name too. That should be pretty straightforward. Thanks so much. Yeah, that's really cool. I hope that they find a lot of value in that. I've been reading your posts on Facebook for a very long time. It's part of why, I asked you if you'd be open to this interview, because you really live what you teach. You're really, really good at branding, and
appreciate it, brother.
I enjoy your stuff. I think people should learn a lot from you and should check you out. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, take care.